Here we go. What's up, my friends? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. I'm a former F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird pilot, and current commercial pilot. Today we're going to break down the Russian Su-27, that maneuver that I believe was caused due to a lack of vodka in the system of the pilot. They probably would have flown it a lot better with a few more shots of vodka, in my opinion. In this video, we're going to talk about what I think happened. We'll watch the actual footage. I'll break it down, and I'll tell you from a fighter pilot perspective, just the things that I've noticed since making the first video that I made on this subject a couple days ago. You can check out that video as well. That video is more of a strategic targeting of the drone with a intentional bump. But what I've been seeing recently from this newly released footage from the Defense Department is that not intentional. I believe it's not an intentional bump that happened, but we're going to get more into that here in a minute. Before we get going, please dominate that like button, and hey, maybe even subscribe. Every time you like and subscribe, a drone somewhere shoots down a Su-27. Could you imagine? All of a sudden the drone's just like, not today, bro. Thanks for being here, guys. Let's dive in. So this newly released footage has come out, and it has shown that the Su-27 was trying to dump fuel on the drone, and then it inevitably hits it due to this dangerous pass. I mean, this is a risky maneuver. When I look at what's going on here, I think these pilots were instructed to try to dump fuel on the drone, to try to maybe disrupt some of the sensors. And then eventually what happens is when you do something that's that tight and that's that close to a slower moving object, when you're not a well-trained pilot, what's going to happen is most likely a collision, because you're not used to judging those distances. You haven't done a lot of training, and it's no hit. It's not like I'm just sitting here hating on Russian pilots. You know, I'm sure if Russian pilots got some of the intense, exhaustive training that American pilots got, that the tables would be relatively similar. But at the same time, when I look at the facts, Russian pilots usually get somewhere around 40 hours of flight time per year, and that's just based on aircraft availability, maintenance, reliability of a lot of the aircraft that they fly. Not that these aircraft aren't cool, don't get me wrong. I actually do a breakdown on the Su-75 and the Su-57. I think they're actually cool aircraft. I have nothing against the aircraft, but I think when you put any pilot into a jet where they don't have a lot of training in, it's essentially a recipe for disaster. And in my opinion, when I watch this footage, which we're going to watch here in a second, what I feel is in the pilot's mind, he's probably like, oh, no, like slow down, slow down. How do I control this thing? How do I not hit this drone? I don't think they intentionally tried to hit it. I don't think they intentionally avoided it either. I mean, but when you're put in a position of having 40 to 50 flight hours a year, and then you're instructed by your higher headquarters to dump fuel on this thing, you're just making it happen. You're essentially John Wayning this thing. You're shooting from the hip, you're flying by the seat of your pants, and you're doing everything you can to not kill yourself while also trying to take down this drone. So it's extremely interesting. Now let's dive into the footage. Oh, and stay to the very end of the video, because I will tell you a bonus story that involves it's a potential, it's an almost dogfight between a Russian Su-30 and an F-15E Strike Eagle in an undisclosed location, of course. So stay at the very end of the video for that bonus round. Now let's dive into this footage. Okay, so now we're checking out this MQ-9 Reaper sensor as it is looking at the Su-27. Now the Su-27's not doing a bad job as far as controlling their closure right now. They're trying to dump gas on this thing, right? So I'm not trying to teach these Russian pilots how to do it, but if you look at the orientation of that aircraft, you're looking, as he's coming in, he's looking up and over the canopy rail. So he's just making life more difficult on himself. Would be much better to be lower so that you could just kind of look up at this thing as you're coming in to do whatever you're about to do. And we can tell that it's going to be fuel because right now you can see there's no cons. There's no exhaust being turned into clouds, essentially. That's what happens when you're in what's called the con level, is you'll actually see what looks to be like exhaust coming out of the jet. So none of that's happening. And now let's watch as the fuel starts to dump out of this bad boy. All right, and now you can see the closure just rapidly pick up, and this is when, in my mind, I see that Russian pilot being like, oh boy, I haven't done this, haven't done any slow speed intercepts probably ever. Most of the intercepts or the rejoins that these pilots have done have just been on other Su-27s or maybe Su-30s. Maybe that lone Su-57 that went up and fought Maverick and Rooster. They've been doing rejoins on fast jets. So doing a rejoin on something slow like this is basically all the worst nightmares of this pilot are flashing before his eyes right now. As that closure picks up, I'm telling you, especially if I'm flying on the Thunderbirds, it does something to you where you're like, oh, how do I slow this thing down? So I guarantee that's what's happening in this pilot's mind right now. And again, they're looking over that rail as they're coming in. So they're just complicating things for themselves. And it's probably a miracle they didn't just smack right into this thing. And you can see their in game, the pilot starts to pull up because they're coming in relatively level, essentially on a collision course. And then they're gonna realize that they're on a collision course. And now, right now, this pilot cannot see the drone at all. So they're literally just flying by the seat of their pants, hoping that they don't hit it. They're on a collision course, he's gonna pull up slightly and just hope that he doesn't hit it. He's essentially doing what's called Jesus, take the wheel right now. Jesus, please take this wheel as I close my eyes and hopefully don't hit this drone. That's what's going on right now. And you can see it's a Su-27. Looks to have some heater missiles on the outside rails, some heat-seeking missiles, and then some radar-guided missiles as well. Looks like a 4x2 loadout on the Su-27. And then the fuel starts dumping out of the back there. And again, just this pilot's praying right now, holding on for dear life. And it looks to me like the fuel is gonna pass off of the left side. That'd be the port side for any of you out there in the Navy. See, I know Navy terms. I can learn Navy terms. To all my Navy brothers and sisters that watch this channel, I love you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Really means a lot to me. Army, Navy, Air Force, anybody watching this, all the veterans out there, I've been getting a lot of comments from you all lately. It's super cool to hear from you, and it just means a lot having you on the channel. So please keep commenting. Please let me know what's going on. Oh yeah, Marines as well, and Coast Guard, and Space Force. Space Force, don't worry, I didn't forget about you. You and your white gloves out there, just sitting there judging, ready to skip this video to go to the next video with your white gloves. Just kidding. That's just what I picture when I picture Space Force. Love you, Space Force operators out there. Keep doing what you're doing. Potentially, someone involved in the Space Force was operating this drone, or at least controlling some of the GPS satellites that are helping this drone out. So we need that Space Force. But yeah, again, you can see that plume of jet fuel just kind of pass by the port side of this MQ-9. And the propeller in this case right now is spinning fine. So no hit, but again, I think it's just a miracle. And that pilot's probably like, whew, I didn't get hit. Oh, that's awesome. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, there's a little dot down there. That's gonna be the wingman. That's gonna be that second Su-27. Assuming what they're doing is just setting up like a wheel around this MQ-9, and now the wingman's gonna give it a shot. So as the wingman prepares, you know, they're preparing this circle around this aircraft. That's just helping them keep the visual. Again, it's gonna be a blue ocean with a blue sky, so they're definitely trying to keep the visual. They've got, you know, they're on opposite sides of the circle, so they're keeping spacing from each other. And now the wingman's gonna give it a shot. So let's see how it goes. All right, so again, coming in from low like that and going blind on this object, it's literally just hoping and praying that you don't just completely smack into it. Again, you know, my previous video, I talked about having precision and having control, but if you haven't flown on a jet team, if you haven't flown for the Thunderbirds, the Blue Angels, some of the European jet teams, Russia even has their own version of that. If you haven't done that, precision and flying and moving the aircraft, you know, a foot at a time is just foreign. It's gonna be foreign to you. So that's not gonna make sense to these pilots coming in slowly and tapping the propeller like with a missile rail or something like that, like I talked about in a previous video. You know, hey, it's my first time making a correction ever, my first slight mistake that I've ever been able to admit. Thanks, I feel like I'm making a lot of progress here, guys. Did I mention that pilots have big egos? In that video, I talk about just tapping the propeller with a missile rail. Now that's using logic from a jet team. That's using logic from extreme precision. Towards the end of my time on the Thunderbirds, I felt like I could move that F-16 6 inches. I could literally determine 6 inches of movement when I'm looking up at an intake. That's definitely not what's going on here. Obviously, this is a really hope I don't smack into this thing, but I'm gonna do my best. And it's kind of, again, flying by the seat of your pants, making it happen. This Russian pilot here is like trying to be the Russian version of Clint Eastwood. He's essentially like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen. So he, to me, seems like he's coming in even a little more hot than the first aircraft. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so after that pass, essentially the sensors on this thing just go down. The aircraft, probably the MQ-9, shakes violently. It's thrown off. You can see it's kind of tilted to the horizon now. It's got its right wing down. So a part of the Su-27 is going to strike the propeller, and I'm assuming it's going to strike a top part of the vertical stabilizer as well, which we can't see in this footage, but it's essentially ripped off one of the fins of the turboprop engine on the MQ-9. So it's just, again, a miracle that the Su-27 didn't just kind of full fuselage into this thing. Now, again, 40 hours of flight training, they're doing the best they can. They're probably scared out of their minds as they're rolling in there. I mean, or if they had enough shots of vodka, they're feeling good, they're having fun, and it's a big party, you know? All right, guys, so you made it to the end of the video. Now I'm excited to tell you about this dogfight between a Russian aircraft, which is probably a Su-30, it's an undisclosed aircraft, and then some sort of an F-15, most likely an F-15E, happened in an undisclosed location. And again, this is just a rumor that I heard, so this is not a confirmed dogfight. And again, fighter pilot stories are at least 10% true, so keep that in mind as you're listening to this. So the pilot in the F-15 ended up intercepting this Su-30 in an area that was definitely a highly contested region. When they intercepted them, they rolled in behind this aircraft. This aircraft was flying off course. They were across a boundary that they shouldn't have been across. But what higher headquarters told this pilot to do was to hold their weapons and just try to communicate with the pilot over the radio, tell them to leave the area. They didn't want to escalate. And again, when it comes to manned aircraft, escalation is way different than the Su-27 coming in and trying to take down this MQ-9. Escalation takes on a completely different form because the stakes are way higher. Taking down a drone, it's almost as though there's no repercussions. And Russia, in this case, is basically just saying, you know what? There's nothing we can really lose here. We can take this thing down, we can try to deny it, but at the end of the day, there's no pilot here, so the reaction that the US has won't be as strong. But in this case, in this dogfight, this pilot was told to skip it and try to escort the Russian aircraft out of there. They were in a position to fire, but they decided not to. But then what happened as they rocked their wings and told the Russian aircraft to leave, that's when the Russian aircraft noticed them and realized they were there. They couldn't really see behind them. There's not a lot of practice of defensive BFM in the Russian military. So they noticed them when they pull up to rock their wings to tell them to get out of there. They try to reach them on guard frequencies. And then that aircraft, the Russian aircraft, pulls up and gets behind the F-15. Now the F-15 is like, thanks, higher headquarters. You know, I could have just taken this thing down. But again, the Russian aircraft doesn't want to escalate because it's a manned fighter and they know that there will be strong repercussions. So eventually contact is broken. The Russian aircraft goes their way and the US F-15 goes its way as well. Could have been a much different story if escalation wasn't as big of a deal. And then why not? How about a second bonus story? So Russia has said that they are going to try to recover this MQ-9 drone. They've actually sent warships into the area where this thing went down in the Black Sea, but the US has responded and said most likely they're not going to get anything out of this, and that the US took certain measures to essentially erase the hard drive that's inside this MQ-9 or whatever is inside it, and that the information that Russia is going to get, if they do recover it, is not really going to be valuable. Also, the area where this thing went down is about 5,000 feet deep, so good luck getting down there to get this thing out. At the end of the day, Russia's still going to say we're going to try to get it because they're trying to dissuade the US from flying further drones into the area. So what will the US response be? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Maybe there should be some Raptors up there just doing a little bit of a friendly escort for the next MQ-9. Who knows? I'm not sure what the response will be. It remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, Russia's obviously trying to get the US to stop flying in there. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. At the end of the day, you watching another video is just the best compliment you can give me. Thanks so much for being here. Most of all, have a great day. Oh, and check out this video on what would happen if the Su-27 used its pylon to strike that drone. And then YouTube will throw up another video here that they think you'll like, but I know you'll make your own decision. Thanks so much for being here. See you in the next video.